Good morning, Year 10. Welcome to our next lesson on Nixon. We're going to continue to understand why Nixon was trying to de-escalate the US involvement in Vietnam. It's good to see the amount of submissions going up, so keep working, making sure you're handing in all your work to me. It's important that you complete all tasks that are set, because otherwise that'll create gaps in your knowledge, and this stuff will be in your exam. You will get a test, and Vietnam will be on there. On Thursday this week, I will be setting a 45-minute assessment, which will go into my mark book, and that will then allow you to go off and enjoy your half term. So this Thursday, you will be set 3 questions to answer, all of them on Vietnam. So do prepare yourselves for that. But let's get into today's lesson. So the do now is the questions on your assignment. So open up your assignment, make sure you're completing it. First question is, what was Nixon's policy on Vietnam? And state one good thing and one bad thing about the policy. All right, so let's get that done. Pause the video here for 2 minutes to answer that question. Okay, thank you very much. So we've got Nixon's policy on Vietnam is Vietnamization. The good thing is that he was trying to withdraw huge amounts of US troops from the conflict, which was a positive thing for Americans. However, one of the bad things, you could say that meant switching to a more aggressive bombing strategy, which would lead to more casualties, definitely civilian casualties. Or you could say that he was leaving South Vietnam very vulnerable. Let's move on. So Vietnamization, we're just going to recap on it. The idea that gradually American troops would leave Vietnam with the South Vietnamese army taking more of the responsibility for the fighting, but the USA would continue to support the government of Saigon. I'd like you to update your definition of Vietnamization on the assignment, but also watch this video for about 5 minutes and add any more information about Vietnamization. So pause the video here for 5 minutes so you can go and watch that video and fill in your definition, and then I'll come back. Alright, so we've got a clear idea about Vietnamization. Vietnamization will most likely be in the assessment on Thursday, just to give you a bit of a heads up. But we're going to look at his strategy. So what was his strategy in Vietnam? So you've already learned about Vietnamization. Now we're going to look at relations with China under Nixon. So we're going to be reading through the information and you're going to be filling in your table. So since the major crisis of the early 1960s, the Berlin Wall and the Cuban Missile Crisis, relations between the USA and the USSR had gradually been improving. The word détente defined the tentative situation. Differences were not forgotten, but constructive discussions could take place over disagreements. So for the first time, the United States and Russia, the USSR, are talking again. So you have to make a decision about whether the relationship is worsening or improving. I'd write improving there, and I'd say the reason. They started to talk, they're having constructive discussions. Let's have a look at China and Russia's relationship with China. American diplomats were also keen to improve relations with communist China. The leader Mao Zedong was still in control, although he was in his 80s. Relations between China and the USSR had worsened, with shots being fired across the border. Nixon took advantage of the situation by visiting China in 1972 and also the Soviet Union in 1972. So, USA-USSR is improving, USA-China is improving. Why? Because they're actually having conversations. The USSR and China is worsening because there have been a number of shots fired across the border and they are almost divided at this time. So finish your table on relations with China under Nixon. So pause the video there until you've completed it. Okay, so we're going to look at the invasion of Cambodia and Laos from 1970 to 1971. You need to read through the information and tell me what was Nixon's aim and what was the result. So to step up the pressure on North Vietnam, the USA invaded Cambodia. Their official aim was to destroy Viet Cong bases there. Nixon hoped it would make the North more open to negotiation. So the aim was to cut Cambodia and Laos off and stop them supplying Vietnam. However, it achieved the opposite. The North Vietnamese government boycotted all talks until US troops were withdrawn. In 1971, the US backed the South Vietnamese invasion of Laos to block the Ho Chi Minh Trail, providing bombing raid as a backup, but the invasion failed. Half of the troops were killed or wounded. The number of US troops in the area continued to drop, and by the end of 1971, there were just 140,000 left. 400,000 had been withdrawn in 3 years. American troops had mostly lost all enthusiasm, with the number of deserters rising sharply. Many soldiers resorted to alcohol and drug abuse habits that were formed in Vietnam and proved hard to break once home. So, what was the aim and what was the result? Pause the video to write down information for both. Okay, let's have a look at the next tactic. So, the next tactic is renewed bombing campaigns of the North, 1972, also known as Operation Linebacker. So what I want you to do is I want you to just pause the video and watch the clip on Operation Linebacker and add information below about what happened. But in March 1972, the North Vietnamese invaded the South, supported by 100 Soviet tanks. Most of the US troops had left, so easy victory was expected. Nixon knew he had to respond to maintain any credibility and to put pressure on the North, and in April 1972 he ordered the Air Force to bomb the North. The operation was codenamed Operation Linebacker, and its aim was to destroy roads, bridges, lorries, tanks, railway lines, storage depots, and the port of Haiphong. So the aim of this was to try and cut the North supplies to the South, and to put so much pressure on bombing civilian targets, but also important communication targets, that the North and the Viet Cong would have to stop fighting. Smart bombs and were guided by lasers, were used for precision bombing, and by targeting the supply lines, Nixon hoped to persuade the North to give up their invasion of the South. The bombing campaign was greeted with a storm of protests in the USA and across the world because of the kind of indiscriminate nature of mass bombing. You can see in the plane here, it's just what we refer to as carpet bombing. So there's not necessarily a lot of precision, and there's a high likelihood that the civilian casualties could be quite high. So why did Nixon renew bombing campaigns in the North, and what impact did the renewed bombing campaigns have? Take a minute, pause there, and get that completed. Okay, so it's important that we look at how the world reacted, and people were not happy with the renewed bombing campaigns. So those are the reasons. Okay, I've given you quite a few, and I want you to answer this 16-mark question. I want you to spend about 25 minutes completing this question. There will be a 16-mark question in your test on Thursday. So the question is, the main reasons Nixon was able to de-escalate the war in Vietnam was the renewed bombing campaign of the North in 1972. So the main reason Nixon was able to de-escalate the war in Vietnam was the renewed bombing campaigns of the North in 1972. So how far do you agree with this statement? So this is a 16-mark question, and the main thing it's asking you for is judgment. It wants you to create an argument and come to a conclusion. So in total, you need to have 4 paragraphs. The first needs to be on renewed bombing campaign of the North and how that helped de-escalate the war. It forced the Viet Cong to stop fighting because of the heavy losses. Your second paragraph needs to counter, and you could use a different factor like Vietnamization was the reason why it de-escalated, more troops being removed. The third, you could talk about relations with China, or you could talk about the invasion of Cambodia and Laos and that impact on de-escalation. And your final paragraph is an overall conclusion. There are also 4 marks awarded for SPAG, which is spelling, punctuation and grammar. So this makes it a 20-mark question. So in total, this paper has got, or this question has got almost 25% or almost 50% of the marks in total for this paper, this one question. So give it a good go. I'm going to see you in 20 minutes. So in 20 minutes time, you can unpause the video and I'll be there. All right, thank you very much for all your effort today. Please make sure you hand this in. I will be marking the 16 mark answer. On Thursday, you will be completing that mini test. So please do some revision in between now and then, and make sure you're ready. That will go into my mark book, and that will help kind of create a prediction, grade predictions for you as we go through. I keep a mark book every single lesson, and any question I've asked you to do, you have been doing. Um, and I have been taking the mark. So please make sure that you are doing the work to your best of your ability. All right, boys, thank you very much for your work today, and I will see you later on in the week.